The woman climbed the mountain alone, but she saw a strange figure at the top of the mountain. When she went over to look at it, she was dumbfounded. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Movie Night. I am Ben, a movie narrator who focuses on recapping thriller movies. Today we will talk about an exciting adventure film, Infinite Storm. Pam is a mountain climber. She felt that she could always be healed when she climbed the mountain. One day, when she was at the foot of the mountain, she saw a car parked there alone, but she asked the campers who came down from the mountain if there was anyone else on the mountain, and they said they saw no one. But this still let Pam feel it was inconceivable. After all, it was 6:50 a.m. Except for her, who would come so early. After climbing a short distance, Pam's hiking pole suddenly broke off, so she could only take a break and stick the broken pole before she started. At nearly 9 o'clock, there was a roar in the sky. The original sun-splashed mountain suddenly turned gray, and dark clouds gathered above her head. However, it was too late to go down when she was on the hillside. Immediately afterwards, there was a heavy wind on the mountain. Obviously, it was very difficult to go through the snow. However, the formidable Pam still didn't stop the pace. After being armed to the teeth, she continued to push herself to climb against the blizzard with her hiking pole. But at this point, it was noon, since she hadn't eaten anything since she climbed. Her physical strength was obviously not enough to continue. In addition, the snow was getting heavier. There might be risks if she continued. The thought of returning finally came to her. However, when she was about to go back, she saw a pair of footprints left by sneakers near her. There was no doubt that it was left by someone else. She was right that the owner of the car at the foot of the mountain was in the mountains. Because she was worried that the person was in danger, Pam followed the footprints, whistled, and continued to move forward. She kept trying to make contact with that person, but unexpectedly, she fell into a pit. If she didn't get out of there soon, it wouldn't be long before the cave was covered with snow, so she spent a lot of energy trying to climb. However, unluckily, when she got to the entrance of the hole, she suddenly fell into the hole again because of her hand slip and physical exhaustion. Unfortunately, this time she fell into a coma. When she woke up, there was already a thick layer of snow on her head, and she had no more strength to climb. Not for a while, Pam fell into a half-awake state. In the meantime, she saw her two lovely little daughters. Perhaps it was the power of affection that gave her a strong belief. This time, she tried her best to climb out of the hole. Because the temperature on the top of the mountain was so low for a long time, the water in the bottle had already frozen into ice. Even though her mouth was dry, she never gave up on finding the unknown climber. She shouted in the blizzard, hoping that someone would respond. After walking around for a long time, she finally found a black figure in a vacant lot. Since time had passed so long, the male climber, John, was already frozen stiff. He didn't even have the strength to open his eyes. Pam found that his condition was not optimistic, so she immediately helped him take off his shoes and socks. Then she used her own hands to warm his feet. Not long after, a weak trembling sound came out of John's mouth. In order to allow his body to quickly recover some temperature, Pam put her hat on his head. Then she took off his freeze-dried clothes and put a plastic bag around him. After John recovered consciousness, she immediately put on clothes for him again. It was already 1:38 p.m. The intensity of the storm did not decrease in the slightest. But if they continued to stay on this vacant lot, both of them would die, so she had to hold him up and tramp in the snow. At this time, because John did not have much strength in his leg, he fell to the ground uncontrollably after taking a few steps. More importantly, there was something wrong with John's mental state because he didn't seem to want to follow Pam's path back to the foot of the mountain. On the contrary, he went in the opposite direction. Fortunately, she was very patient and never gave up on saving him. The situation was just getting better. But something unexpected happened. John suddenly ran toward Pam, but his target rather than her was the small hillock near them. He jumped from the hillock without hesitation and appeared as if he thought, "Ignore me, I don't want to live." Because of his character shield, it was just his stiff ankle that fractured. So after she restored his ankle, they set off again on their return. Since then, John still wanted to give up easily. Because of his carelessness, they rolled directly down the hillside. But I guess the reason why he wanted her to give up saving him was that he might feel the likelihood of survival was tiny, and he didn't want to drag her down as well. Or maybe he had no intention of living. In order to recover John's physical strength, Pam even gave him the few chocolates and drinks she had. I have to say that John was really lucky. He met a strong and warm-hearted woman. Additionally, she was a nurse. During their break, she also applied medicine to his ankle wound. It was about to be evening. The sunset was coming. To survive, they had to hurry back to the foot of the mountain before the sun went down. They were halfway up the mountain and near the foot, but because two people moved inconveniently, their progress was too slow. Gradually, The sun went down and darkness fell. What was more troublesome was that to reach the opposite bank, they had to cross a stream through the tree trunk. But in the process of crawling on the trunk, John carelessly fell into the water. But at that time, because she was so busy with her own things, there was no way to pull him up. So the two separated again. Exhausted, she looked all around but couldn't find him. When she broke down inside and sat on the ground, there was a sudden splash in the water. She immediately went there to check and found that the sound was really from John. When she exerted herself to pull him to the shore, the time was more than 7 p.m. This time, the two laughed because they saw each other again. After so many twists and turns, John eventually no longer wanted to give up the thought of survival. He followed her closely. As they walked back, they chatted and sang in order to keep each other awake. In this process, she recalled her daughter again, not knowing how long they had walked. They finally found a car passing by, but because the sound of their shouts was too low in the wood, the passing car did not stop. But if they could see the car passing, it indicated that they were not far from the parking lot at the foot of the mountain. At about 11 o'clock at night, two tired people finally returned to the foot of the park. She didn't expect that when she was waiting for John to get in the car, he suddenly ran to the other car to drive away and utterly disregarded Pam behind the car. By the time the exhausted Pam finally got home, it was nearly midnight. Hungry, she ate the rest of the pizza and laughed feebly. It seemed that everything that happened this day was fate. She exerted herself to save the stranger, and her body was injured everywhere. As a result, the stranger unexpectedly left her immediately after getting down the mountain. With physical and mental exhaustion, she lay in the bathtub and slept unconsciously. In her dream, she dreamed of her daughter. That day, the gas leaked at home all night. When Pam woke up with difficulty, the air in the house was breathless. She hurriedly opened the window next to her so that she could survive. However, when she got to her daughter's room, it was already too late. Two daughters were killed because of her own negligence. So after that day, she fell into endless self-blame. She could not forgive herself or let it go because it would cost a lot of money to see a psychologist. She chose to climb mountains to express her emotions. 5 days later, in the morning, Pam heard the report that she had rescued John on the news and saw the corresponding reports online. But these news didn't make her feel happy at all. After breakfast, she drove alone to the foot of the mountain. Then she went to the mountain to relax as usual. After she got home, a reporter found her. Apparently, this reporter came for the news that John had reported in the media. Because the article was anonymous, people didn't know who wrote it. After the reporter left, she went to a coffee shop, and the person waiting for her there was indeed John. After returning the clothes to her, John finally explained his situation. It turned out that the reason why he wore so little and climbed the mountains alone, in fact, was because he couldn't let go of the memory of the death of his loved one. After listening to John's story, she finally told John the story of her daughter. Perhaps because the two people had similar experiences of fondly remembering people, they understood each other's thoughts. After this heart-to-heart conversation, the woman who was unwilling to forgive herself seemed to finally gradually feel relieved. When she climbed the mountain again and saw the warm sun, she finally smiled. For the rest of her life, she raised 4 children, and at the age of 67, she engaged in volunteer activities. When I finished watching the film, I thought that rather than saying that Pam saved John, John's similar experiences and stories managed to redeem Pam. The influence between people is mutual. It looks like she did a good deed. But in fact, no one expected that in the end, she might be the person who benefited from it. Alright, that's it for this video. Thank you for your time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment.